Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bracy Sports Media. My name is Aaron Bracy, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by Bill Meltzer and a panel of guests who are going to help us today with tonight's Bracy Sports Media Q&A. Bill is a writer for the official Flyers website, PhiladelphiaFlyers.com. He's also the content manager for the Flyers Alumni Group, and he covers the Flyers for HockeyBuzz.com. Bill, thank you so much for joining us on Bracy Sports Media.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank everybody for coming out. It's nice to see and talk to you, Aaron. We sit near each other quite often in the press box, and it's always fun talking with Aaron.
Well, as I put out on Twitter, I've always enjoyed talking to Bill because I always can bounce questions off him. Bill always has an answer. Unfortunately, this season, Bill, they moved your seat about 3 seats to my left, so yeah. I don't get to have the fountain of knowledge anymore. But it's still great to be able to see you tonight and talk Flyers. So let's jump right into it, Bill. First question is going to come from me, and then we're going to go to our audience. I noticed the Flyers are getting a seed or a bye with the round robin series when the NHL returns. How do you think that's going to affect them? Because they're not going to get to play a meaningful game in that first round. Do you think having that time off is going to hurt them, or do you think they're going to be fine when it comes time to play the real games?
Well, the Flyers do play the 3-game round robin. They don't have to play the qualifying round, the best of 5. Really, I think it's an ideal situation for the Flyers because they have 3 games, one against Washington, one against the Bruins, and one against Tampa Bay. And the Flyers, even if they were to lose all 3 of those games, they can't go into the playoffs any worse than they are now. They'll still
right.
The 4 seed would be the worst case scenario, and they can only move up. So, they have those 3 games. You pick off at least one of those games, 2 of those games. All of a sudden, you find you're maybe a 2 seed, maybe even a 1 seed. The thing is that this time of year is always unpredictable anyway.
Right. And
then you add the long layoffs by the time the teams play again, and an actual game, and it'll be about 4.5 months since they last played. What you see a lot of times anyway is early in a season. You have early in the season, anything can happen. It's
right.
a little bit like a playoff series. Look at the season. There was no worse team in the NHL than Detroit, but Detroit won 3 of its first 4 games to start the season, and that's not unusual. Teams will eventually level off. So, it's going to be really crazy, and I think that a lot of matchups on paper aren't going to play out that way on the ice. So, pretty much anything can happen. But I think the Flyers are not are in a pretty good spot. And, most teams will have healthy players. So everybody's starting from from an even playing field, I guess.
All right. Makes sense. Let's go to Derek. Derek has a question for you, Bill. Let me unmute you, Derek.
Actually, you're supposed to go to an event to meet people within the industry during spring break, which it didn't happen. But how long have you been with the Flyers organization? What roles have you had?
So, if you go all the way back to the first decade of the 2000s, I did some freelance work with the Flyers. if you go back even further, I used to cover what was then the Philadelphia Phantoms. There was a website, Hockey's Future. So that when you're early on working in any media realm, but especially in sports, you're doing it for free, but you're getting credentials. So you get into buildings, you build some contacts, and eventually you work towards some low paid opportunities and then hopefully better paid opportunities. So I was fortunate enough to do work writing game stories for the Flyers game program. The one you get when you walk into the arena, and they don't have it anymore. They got rid of the program a couple of years ago. But at that point it was still a fixture. So I did some freelance articles for that. I worked for NHL.com. Skip ahead. I was able to get hooked up with the Flyers Alumni Association, and from that, I had the opportunity to start working for the Flyers, beginning in the 50th anniversary season. Working for the website, doing a variety of other things. When they did the trivia question on broadcast, I would research the question and write the question for the broadcasters. So that started in 2016. This is my 4th year full-time.
And Derek is from Vancouver, Bill. So
Washington, yeah.
Washington area, big hockey fans out there. And Derek, you definitely have to check out Bill's previews for the Flyers. They're always super informative. I always check them out before I cover any game, Bill, on Hockey
great.
Buzz. Let's go to Justin. Justin has a question for you, Bill.
Hey, thanks again for talking to us.
My
Thanks
pleasure.
for coming on, Justin.
So I'm in the Maryland, D.C. area, so I got to ask you a question about Ovi. He had that great run this year, and the season just stops like that. So I got two questions. So do you think he's going to be able to recover when the season starts? And do you think we'll ever see a player as great as him again?
Well, I'll take the first part of it first. I mean, I think that he's going to be in the same boat with everybody. Nobody's going to just pick up where they left off. They are going to have pretty substantial training camps. So it'll be about the length of a normal training camp. And then for the top 4 teams, they'll have the 3-game round robin I was talking about. And then Ovi will always bring it when the games are big. I mean, he's one of the all-time great goal scorers, no question about it. I mean, he has a chance to maybe even catch Gretzky for the all-time number 1. Will there be another player as great as him? I mean, it could take 15 years, it could take 20 years, but eventually someone will come along. I mean, he's a unique player in a lot of ways. One of the interesting things to me about Ovi, early in his career, besides all the goals he scored, he was super physical. I mean, he would hit anything that moved.
Right.
Then he had some injuries, and he had to, he had to adapt as he got a little bit older, and he's done it in a tremendous way. I mean, he said, he still is a top player in the NHL. So I mean, he's nowhere near finished. Players like that don't come around in every draft, every 2 drafts, every 3 drafts. But I think at some point you'll see, another player who you could compare to him. I mean, every player is unique though. Like, I mean, look at how long Jaromir Jagr has played. He's still playing in the Czech League.
He's still playing.
He's still playing. He owns a team in the Czech League. He's still playing. And I love that because he's the only still active player my age. So it makes me happy that he's, as long as he's still playing, I don't feel too old.
Wow. One thing I know, I'm going to go to Dylan in a second, but one thing I noticed about Ovi when the Flyers play the Capitals this year is I think he spends like every single minute of the power play. I don't think he takes a break.
Yeah, he's one of the few guys in the NHL who plays both units, and he plays all 2 minutes. And there was that overtime game this year where he had a shift that was about 2 minutes and 45 seconds long, which is crazy, especially in 3-on-3 when you're going up and down the ice. And he finished his shift with a breakaway. So
I think my head was buried in my computer at that time, Bill. Yeah, trying to rewrite my story.
Ovi is just a special player.
Let's go to Dylan. Dylan, go ahead with your question for Bill. Let me unmute. Sorry, Dylan. Hold on. Oh, rats.
We good now?
Yeah, we're good now.
Great. Hey, Bill, thanks for taking my question. Really appreciate it. So when you were, first starting out, did you always know you wanted to, be a writer covering the Flyers?
Yeah, actually, I mean, it's kind of living out a dream. I played enough hockey to know I wasn't going to make a career out of it, or any sport for that matter.
Yeah.
But I've always loved writing. I have loved the Flyers since I could walk and talk. So, yeah, this is the next best thing to it, and it's what I always wanted to do. Jobs in the industry are hard to come by, and you have to be in the right place at the right time. It took me a long time. I mean, you have to love it because there are better paid jobs out there. You could say that about journalism as a whole, unless you're, a Pulitzer Prize winner or something. But I mean, but yeah, it's something I always wanted to do. You definitely have to love it. And the other thing too is you just have to keep plugging. You never turn down a gig, because you never know where it can lead. Even if this one doesn't pay that well, maybe not be an article that interests you, it can lead to steady jobs. You meet new people, and it opens a lot of doors. So the biggest thing I could say is you just keep going.
Yeah, I was also to follow up with that. Like, how did you build up your confidence when you were going through that? Because like you said, jobs are pretty scarce, and it is hard to get that first foot in the door. So how did you build up your confidence that you really belonged in this industry?
Yeah, that takes a really, really long time.
Sure.
I mean, there's still days that I walk into the building and I'm like, they're letting me in. I don't have to pay to get in. I'm getting in for free. I think that's just normal.
Yeah.
You can't take things personally. If you pitch a story and it gets turned down, it could be for any number of reasons. And I just think you have to, I go back and I read things that I wrote. It could have been within the last year, and sometimes you read it, with a fresh eye later on, and you cringe at it, and sometimes you go, hey, that actually was decent.
Right.
So I think as with anything, it's just a matter of doing it, and also finding what interests you. One of the I guess I was in that first generation of writers that started on the internet. I've done like freelance stringer work for newspapers, such as any newspapers have stringers anymore. But I mean, I was in the first generation and really got my start on the internet. Said through Hockey's Future, there was an old website, no longer exists, called Pro Hockey Euro Report, and that was actually how I covered the NHL playoffs for the first time. Was writing on the European players and different teams.
Mm-hmm.
One other piece of advice I have is you find a little area that interests you in or whatever that not everybody else is covering. So if everybody else is walking over to Claude Giroux, maybe you walk over to another player in the room and you find another angle. So while there's 5 stories on Giroux, maybe you have the one on whoever. Pick a player, Phil Myers,
Right.
or whatever player on whatever team. I think that's how you differentiate, and it also depends. Like some media departments are really good about setting up one-on-ones. Maybe it's not that day, maybe it's by phone call. But I mean, I think you find something that not everybody else is doing, and that's one of the keys, I think.
That's great
Right.
advice. Let's
Thank
go
you.
to Toddy. Toddy, you have a question. Can you unmute yourself? See if I. Oh,
Here we go. Yeah.
there we go. Oh,
Nope. Muted again.
go ahead, Toddy. You can unmute yourself because I think we're both hitting the button at the same time.
There we go.
Can we hear you?
I'm not hearing.
Let me see here. You're unmuted. We can't hear you though. While you're trying to get that, can we hear? I hear you now. Go ahead, Toddy.
All right. So what do you think about the Capitals winning this year's Stanley Cup?
Well, it's I mean they're certainly they're certainly a contender. I don't think Braden Holtby had his best year, but I think that he still is a high quality goaltender. Don't forget what a big part of any playoff run goaltending is.
As the Flyers know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Holtby is still a great goaltender. Strong team down the middle. There's a physical presence. I mean, they're a team that could win any given playoff series. There's not an opponent in the East that I could say, okay, well, that's a really tough matchup for the Caps that I don't think they could win. So I think that although I would pick the Bruins on paper in a series over them, I think the Capitals are perfectly capable of coming out of the East, going all the way. They did it a couple years ago. They're not as deep on the blue line as they were, a couple of years ago, but it still is a very dangerous team.
Bill, while we're on the Capitals, real quick before we go to Derek, talk about the trade the Flyers made. They traded Gudas and they got the defenseman who slipped my mind right now.
And
Niskanen, right? How big has Niskanen been this year for them, and kind of just giving them a steadying presence on the back line?
Oh, he's been enormous. Yeah, it's been huge. He's been good for Ivan Provorov as a partner. He's been good for being able to seed your defensemen, slot them correctly in the lineup, which is a big thing that people sometimes overlook. Right. So now Travis Sanheim is in the second pair where he belongs. It's a perfect spot for him, and you can slot your pairings accordingly. Right-handed shooter. Flyers needed a right shot defenseman, although Gudas himself is one, but he's not a 20-minute-a-night guy.
Right.
Niskanen brings a calming presence, and he brings a Stanley Cup ring too. and
That
that's huge. That experience, that leadership, that demeanor that he brings. And the Flyers were gambling last year, right after Christmas. The Caps fans in the chat room will remember this. He had a pretty scary concussion because he went head first into the boards, and he wasn't himself when he came back. He only was out of about a week, I guess. But when he came back the rest of the season, he wasn't himself. This season, he's back to the Matt Niskanen that everybody is used to saying.
All right, let's go to Derek for another question. Go ahead, Derek.
So obviously, people have dreams of working in the pros and everything, but for a college student who is probably going to hopefully go after a master's and everything, what's just a simple way, just the first step, just to get your foot in the door with hopefully a pro NHL team, even if it's unpaid?
Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes teams have internships available. That's one way. What is your particular area of interest? I mean, where would you want to work?
So I'd love to either call games, play-by-play, or even write for teams. So right now, I was with BCHL Net for the first. It's that sort of fan site. I was with them for 6 months, and now I'm with the hockey writers. And so I just joined them, and I'd love to. I'm really into writing right now. So basically, any sort of media sort of thing.
On the writing side, okay. Because I say for the broadcasting side, you have to build up your tapes.
Yeah.
And BCHL, BCHL is a good start. Junior A is, it's a good enough level where there'll be some, there'll be scouts at games and those kind of things too. You'll have pro organizations there on occasion. Unless you can get an internship, and pretty much no NHL teams have paid ones, but most teams have unpaid ones. There's not much on the writing side there. Unless a PR department is looking for an extra hand, but for example, like some teams need analytics interns, for example, and even if that's not your main area, and there is an internship available, remember you can always move departments at some point down the line. So if there's another area that interests you, it's more important to get in. And then, then things can work out down the line as to what other opportunities there might be. Even if it's not NHL right away, there's American League teams, ECHL teams. You sometimes you have to be willing to travel in your car to games, because just those kind of things. But I mean, definitely keep an eye out. Sometimes even NHL teams, there's a little tiny box at the bottom for jobs available. So if you're looking for internships, start very early. So if you're looking a season ahead, like the NHL, next season might not start till January. I'm hearing the end of December, beginning of January of next year. Be sending things out now, and just asking. And sometimes sometimes you build it that way. And also send out to send out the college programs, college hockey programs, minor league teams. You can use any of these things to build it, and then it can go from there.
Do you think that's the best way to kind of even just drop your name at places, like to email people and just to kind of get your name in there?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And if you have some samples to send them, an article that that you're proud of or whatever, and particularly because you've done multimedia work, if you teams also, for example, like they have their social media department. So if you have any experience editing video as well as broadcasting, show them the different media you've worked in related to hockey. Just send them the clips, and just ask them to keep you in mind if they have internships available. And that's that I think is the best way to go about it.
Good question and good advice. Let's go to Vaughn. Vaughn, go ahead and unmute yourself if you can. And
yes, sir.
All right, there you are.
All right, so thank you again for having me. Thank you both for your time again this week. One of the things I wanted to ask was the NHL. One of the things I love about the NHL playoffs is, other than the increase in intensity, is like the unpredictability of it. I think that in the MLB have the most unpredictable playoff series in sports. And with the uncertainty right now of which teams are going to be in, no seedings being set with a play-in around the round robin and all that, I wanted to know if you had any sleeper teams that you think might have benefited the most from this kind of break and play and who do you think might be able to like seize that opportunity in this kind of peril that they're in right now?
Well,
Great question.
Yeah, actually, my sleeper team would be Columbus because they were playing really, really good hockey until Seth Jones went down and Atkinson went down, and they were missing half their lineup by the time and their goalie is back. Korpisalo is back and healthy. Tortorella has such a good system. Players buy into it. They can beat you 2-1 if they have to, and they block a lot of shots, so they keep themselves in games. They're not going to be anybody's pick to come out of the East, and that might be a tough for them. But if I were potentially playing them, they would be a team that I'd be scared to play. They're a tough opponent, and another team that would scare me. The Rangers wouldn't have been in. They were the hottest team in the NHL. Until shortly before the league stopped. Panarin was playing out of his mind. Shesterkin is now healthy. He'll be back in net. And they're playing with house money anyway because they weren't expected to be a playoff team this soon. Sometimes when a team has no pressure on them, they're about the most dangerous team you can play. So, those would be the two teams I'd point out right now.
It's strange. Go ahead, Vaughn. It's strange to see when we saw the Rangers. We did see Lundqvist in net this year, but it's strange to see the Rangers kind of going away from him after all these years.
Yeah, unfortunately, age catches up with the player. They have an outstanding young goalie in Shesterkin, who I think is going to be a top goalie in the league for a long, long time. Lundqvist is in his late 30s now, and he's got a lot of mileage on him. He's a goalie who played a lot of hockey. He was a real workhorse for a lot of years, and I don't think he's necessarily done.
Right.
But I think he's more of a goalie in how you look at splitting time with a younger goalie at this point. I think he could still play 40 games a season, put the right team in front of him. He might have one more run left in him, but I think the years of saying Lundqvist is a superstar goalie and a Vezina Trophy candidate. I think he's past that stage of his career, but he still can steal a game.
Bill, we have about 5 minutes left. Let's take a look at the Flyers going into the playoffs. You mentioned the Rangers were hot. The Flyers were obviously hot. They had won 9 straight, and then they lost that last game to Boston. What does this do to their momentum? Obviously, it hurts it, but what do you think their playoff chances are? They're going to get some injured players back, which should help them, JVR and the defenseman. What do you break it down for us? What do you see the Flyers doing in the playoffs here?
I think the Flyers are for real. I think they're going to be a contender in the East for many years to come. They have young players who are emerging. The Provorovs, the Konecnys, right? They've taken the next step. There are other really good young players like Morgan Frost who not contributing this year, but in the near future, I think will be very solid contributing players. Carter Hart, we were talking about Shesterkin a second ago. Carter Hart is going to be a phenomenal goaltender in the NHL for a very long time. He's already very good. So that solves a long-term need as long as he stays healthy. He is for real. And I think that for the first time there's some depth too. Couturier being the number 1 center, the addition of Kevin Hayes has been huge for the team. Even with Oscar Lindblom's unfortunate situation, still undergoing cancer treatments, although he's apparently doing very well. It's I don't know if or when Oscar will be coming back to hockey, but it was a big loss for the team. Nolan Patrick hasn't played a game all year. Hopefully Nolan's situation will resolve, but yet from, I think it was January 8th until the pause, the Flyers had the second best record in the NHL. So I think the team is a really good club for a long time. And I can't ignore the coaching part of it too, because one thing the Flyers have done really, really well is they've cut the team goals against, and the Flyers have allowed the fewest shots on goal of any team in the NHL. You do that again, you're going to give yourself a chance to win most nights. And finally the goal scoring came around. The Flyers don't have superstar goal scorers, but they have a lot of different guys on a given night who can step up offensively. And to me, those are really tough teams to play against. I wouldn't want to play against the Flyers.
You mentioned the coaching, Bill. How much do you think AV's system has been the result of them playing so well? And how much do you think it's just his demeanor where he's able to just steady the room and his leadership qualities? What kind of percentage or breakdown would you put on those two aspects of his coaching?
Well, I think that leadership has to come largely from within the room.
Right.
I mean, the players have to have a confidence in the coach too.
Right.
And the fact that, he's taken teams in both conferences, the Stanley Cup Finals. He's won a Jack Adams Award. He could win another one this year. He's at least a finalist. Berube might win it this year. Maybe Cassidy will win it this year. But I think Davey is right in that top three group as the contender this year. I think it's a very well coached team. They come in well prepared to play. And the players understand and buy into the system. I think one of the things that's been, it's been nice to see is, even though he's a fun-loving kind of guy, great sense of humor, all that down the line, all that right down the line, if you don't play the way he wants you to play, you're not going to play.
Right.
And
we saw that early in the season.
Oh yeah, that's right. And he'll call out veterans. He'll call, listen, the first year of a coach, he kind of has carte blanche to do what he wants to do, and then the team has to buy in. After that, right now he has a lot of buy-in. So I think the coaching piece of it has been really huge. Some of it's strategic, some of it's how he handles personnel, and when he's pushed a wrong button here and there, he adjusts.
Well, Bill, I definitely want to thank you for joining us today. If you haven't checked out Bill's work, you definitely need to find it at flyers.com, at Flyers Alumni, and of course, hockeybuzz.com. Bill definitely is a must follow for any Flyers, NHL, and hockey fan. Bill, thanks so much for joining us here tonight on Bracy Sports Media.
It was really my pleasure. I had a good time, and thank you again, everybody, for coming aboard here.
And thanks to everyone for joining us. And if you like our videos, check us out on YouTube at Bracy Sports Media. Listen to our podcast at Bracy Sports Media, and check us out on our website, bracysportsmedia.com. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and have a great night.